Dear viewers, welcome to our series Visit and many thanks again for your numerous letters, which reached me this week. Today I would like to answer an email by Catherine, and maybe I can briefly sum up the email content. Catherine writes that for many years, and she honestly describes partly since her childhood, she has always been struggling with stomach pain. Two years ago, a gastroscopy took place and slight signs of gastritis were recognizable. Conventional medicine then suggested taking an acid blocker, and that's it. She writes so nicely, "These have been going in the trash can for years." She made her own diet and thus had essentially peace, 2 years of peace. That's the first point, and Catherine, you did it right if you know that today nearly 85% of people react to grains, due to the glyphosate in grains, normal bread, pizza, doner kebab, everything that is baked, cakes, pasta, with an inflammation after 4 to 70 hours in the body, then of course it is a matter of accumulation. The stomach has gastric acid ready for us, which has a very low pH value, and we need this low pH value. The stomach is the only organ in our body that absorbs uncontrollably. This uncontrolled, I emphasize that, because that is what then gets into our body in a controlled way through the mucous membranes of the small intestine, which is only then analyzed and broken down via enzymatic activity and digestive juices. But as part of its supply intake for the organism, the stomach first absorbs everything, and is of course dependent on the presence of these digestive juices. And whether digestive juices are sufficient or not sufficient, that is determined by completely different functions in our organism. In any case, she honestly writes that a lot of stressors have entered her life at the moment. This goes as far as not being vaccinated against the C disease. That's sometimes a lot of mental pressure that people have to endure. Then the current situation in Ukraine, the incredible workloads that have tightened, both in the family and in the context of her job in emergency and disaster management or preparedness. So a situation that demands incredibly much of her on a level that is now anything but affecting. Direct digestive activity, we should understand that. Her diet consists of highly organic food, including organic meat, she writes. She is omnivore. She steams, uses high-quality oils and stomach-friendly tea coffee, little fruit, but I tolerate it well. I avoid hot and cold, spicy, and I avoid salty things, and chamomile tea also helps me a lot. I would appreciate a holistic view. Thank you very much, Catherine, for this email, and maybe we can go back to a legend at the moment, the saga of Hercules fighting the sea monster Hydra. Hercules' father, Zeus, who was the god of sky and thunder and who also ruled over all other gods, charged Hercules with a mission to kill that very Hydra that was a snake-like monster. Hercules received a golden sword from Athena. And Athena was the goddess of wisdom, the goddess of civilization, the goddess of just warfare, of severity, of strategy and the feminine arts, justice. And this goddess Athena also accompanied all heroes in their great battles. Hydra was a dangerous adversary, however, and her spit-out breath was so poisonous that whenever Hercules kept cutting off a head, 2 new ones grew. And he asked Zeus to send him the nephew Iolaus, that he could burn the stumps of those heads with a torch to keep them from growing back. Only as one head, and this particular head was severed by Hercules, the Hydra collapsed and died. What is it actually trying to tell us? It wants to tell us that symptomatically we are not making any progress here and that we would also understand in the context of chronic gastritis what provokes gastritis in the first place. And of course the question of what I can control through nutrition is very important. It's also important to think about how I eat, how I drink. But in my treatment, and I have really been doing this for more than 30 years, there is something that always brings clarity to 80% of the diagnosis or the causes that led to it. And that is listening. It's a pity that we doctors don't take the time to listen anymore, because you put it very nicely. It's outgrown you on one level. And this outgrown means that through my autonomic nervous system, but which directs and controls us 99% unconsciously, our autonomic nervous system works adaptively and it feels much faster than our consciousness, what the body needs in which situation. And its functions are linked to this, which in the context of a stressful situation immediately makes everything possible for us to be prepared for this stressful situation. And on the other hand, that the program of convalescence, calming down, healing, the satisfaction of also providing enough digestive juices to build up again, build enough libido, build enough hormones, reactivate immunity, that connects to the opponent. And via this functionality, via this regulation, we as humans, as individuals, but also mammals are supplied. That means we don't have to worry at all about whether we'll have enough digestive juices tomorrow or the day after. We don't even have to worry that when we're running a marathon, the body is providing that energy to that situation. And these are evolutionary programs, also here and now. And every child born today is endowed with that. Therefore, illness is never a condition, rather it is the end of a chain of conditions which have often set in for the body in its adaptation to life. We say information comes first. The information comes, bad news, more bad news, stress without end. A lot has to fall by the wayside because it all weighs on me, and now I have to swallow it somehow and compensate. And then this so-called sympathetic nervous system really becomes dominant to its opponent, the vagus, and the vagus is not called vagus, but that is a so-called vagabond. And maybe I can ask the director to show the slide now. And there you see, the vagus is a nerve marked in yellow that leads from the top at the brainstem down the esophagus. And now one speaks here of the anterior vagus nerve. It goes to the heart, to the lungs, to the airways, to the muscles, from the larynx down to the throat up to the entire movement of the facial muscles. And the rear vagus nerve, we also say the old one and the other is the new one, it now pulls from the heart to the lungs, but it pulls also in the lower part of the diaphragm to the underlying digestive organs, that is the stomach, that is the liver, that is the pancreas, the spleen, and the ascending part of the large intestine. I am showing you this slide because the vagus is the nerve of rest, and because the vagus, for weeks and months, as you describe it, was simply no longer sufficiently served. And that must also go hand in hand with the fact that the whole economy of my digestion needs the vagus program to provide enough digestive juices, to have the rest, not to develop indigestion as part of constipation. A normality of the digestive juices needs a good phase in which the vagus can become active. And both are incredibly dependent on how the stress program ramps up, and in purely evolutionary terms, stress was associated with fear, flight or fight. The body has provided everything and stopped the care of the digestion, stopped the supply of sufficient immunity. It put all the power and energy into the muscles, provided the sugar, into the brain that I'm highly mentally active and can free myself in no time at all and maybe run faster and climb up the tree to save myself from tigers or saber-toothed tigers. But that's no longer the case today. Today I am in this dominant stress. All energy reserves are provided, but I'm not doing anything in the sense of doing it physically now. I'm standing there, everything is activated, everything is also reduced, and I just have to be in this mental pressure. I have to continue unchallenged, regardless of my personal situation, and that only works partially. And that's why it's so important to understand at this point, you've done a wonderful job, you have a very conscious diet that you follow every day. Of course you can always do that to your stomach, which you are now doing with chamomile tea, with a cure by a good healing earth, for example. Regulate with healing earth again. Of course, a good base powder is also good, but be careful, our stomach should never become purely basic, It always has to keep this low pH value, because it is the entry into the entire gastrointestinal system, and our body also has no other possibilities to react to strains, parasites, bacteria, fungi like it can in the stomach, and that is incredibly important for it. Misinformation will always result in misregulation. And the body now adapts to you with what you may not have felt unconsciously for a long time. And this misregulation becomes misinformation, but that doesn't mean at any hour that you can't get back there. You just need to allow your autonomic nervous system, that has adapted to you and your situation, a change of mood again. And there is a wonderful book, and I would now like to ask the director to show the next slide. The book is written by my dear colleague Stanley Rosenberg. It's in German and it's called The Self-Healing Nerve, and it's about that vagabond vagus. It is such a great book because it is written in a very simple and understandable language and introduces us to the 10 cranial nerves, all of which can be assigned naturally with all their regulatory and functional patterns for our body. And even if you always take the opportunity that a symptom is actually the language of the body, is to ask us to slow down, to ask us to let go, to find this inner peace again, however it may happen, then this book explains how to do that. And there are wonderful exercises for the vagus nerve, the upper one, but above all for the stomach, the lower branch, slowly back into a stronger, more innovative path, because the stomach needs the information so that it reacts in one way or another. Just like when you, for example, see beautiful food in front of you and you haven't eaten for a long time, you're hungry too, then the eyes alone will trigger a so-called cephalic reflex, and the stomach begins to prepare the digestive enzymes because the eyes have already seen the food. That means everything in our body is in a huge fine-tuning, and I think it's incredibly great that you say no acid blocker. The acid blocker is for the absolute acute case, the acid blocker is for the stomach ulcer. But the acid blocker interferes so strongly with the stomach environment and reflexively also in the pancreas system, liver, small intestine, that we find a complete decoupling of the regulatory ability of these digestive organs that are working together and are coordinated. And our digestive organs decide how our blood flow is. Our digestive organs decide whether I develop dementia tomorrow or not. Our digestive organs decide if I can provide enough energy reserves to the body or not. And I think these are valuable things to give you, that by treating yourself consciously and responsibly you are able to understand yourself better, and maybe also, you are still very young, but I can't really say how young you are. I don't know your age, but it sounds very young that you have already seen so many first experiences in your life, that your body is really ready to take on this problem and to clarify. And that tomorrow you will be more careful in dealing with yourself, in dealing with what you eat, in dealing with how you deal with yourself, and also in dealing with the things that haunt us in life today that we have to accept. And anything goes so far, as long as we don't forget ourselves. And at the end I may have to tell you a very small experience, which was a key experience for me. Big congress, 500 people. I sat in the first row as a participant. And what the speaker on the stage said that touched me deeply because it was so interesting, so I've been glued to every word of this speaker. And suddenly 2 men behind me started a dialogue that bothered me so much that I thought, why are they talking? Why are they so ruthless? I can't even concentrate. And I wrestled with myself. I didn't have the heart to ask them back there to be quiet. I had my inner fears as a young woman, who knows, and so on. Anyway, that went on for about 15 minutes, and all of a sudden I felt my stomach burn. And this burning in the stomach, it increased so much because of course I had swallowed this stress, that at that moment my neighbor first became aware of it. My neighbor was so tall and so strong, she turned around. She banged her fist on the table and said, "Guys, if you guys don't shut up now, I'll take you outside and then we have peace and quiet." In a moment I thought, I would have said it nicer, but the fact was, everyone around her was infinitely grateful. And that taught me a life lesson. If you start to develop symptoms of this problem yourself, because that was clearly here through my inner conflict, I'll never let that happen again. Concerns will be addressed, problems will be solved, or my attitude towards something will change, but I will make sure to keep my inner balance. And I am really so grateful to this colleague for this experience to this day. With this in mind, I wish you all a wonderful week. I wish you, Catherine, a good recovery and, above all, a very valuable time reading, or also for all the others, of this really exciting book. On that note, I wish you a nice time. See you soon.